This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. This is one of those instant conversations for me where I am inspired, motivated in a split second. The man just has a personality. He has a vibe. He has a something that you immediately feel. Now, I did this conversation with Mike on video, so we were able to see each other. Maybe that inspired both of us. But what a fun conversation. My guest today is Mike Massimino. Mike happens to be an astronaut. He happens to be the first astronaut to appear on this podcast. Today we discuss his new book, Moonshot, a NASA astronaut's guide to achieving the impossible. Now, of course, you probably know how I do this podcast. I like to have people on that have written books. I like to read, but I don't take people through a new book word by word. That's not how I do it. I just want to have a conversation. And my guest today, Mike Massimino, what a great guy to have a conversation with. I wish I could talk to him for hours, for weeks, for months. There would just be so much that I could learn from him. But you know what? I'll take this almost 1 hour conversation because I'm damn lucky. I get to do this podcast. I get to talk to smart people. It's always fun. Without any further delay, please enjoy the first astronaut to appear on this podcast, Mike Massimino.
But you left San Diego for Saigon?
Wasn't even a close call.
Wow.
San Diego's beautiful. You know that. It's beautiful. The weather's gorgeous. Everything's perfect. You've been around Asia, I'm assuming.
I've never been to Saigon. I've been to Hong Kong. I've been to Japan a few times. We trained over there. I was in Thailand this past summer for the first time. San Diego's tough to beat, man. Usually people go there, Michael. That's the place they want to go.
Let's see. You were born in 61. I was born in 68.
62, actually. 61 years old, but I was born in 62.
In the early 70s, you would have felt some of that bad vibe that occurred all those years ago.
You mean the war?
Yeah, that would have been in your memory. I was a little too young for it to really sink in. Anyways, none of that's here anymore. That's why I'm here.
Wow. Can you go to the Hanoi Hilton? Do you go to Hanoi?
I've been a couple times, but most of the time in Saigon. They're very different.
We had a guy who was our chief of flight crew operations, a pilot. He was an instructor pilot named Bob Naughton. He passed about a year ago. He was a good friend of mine. But he was a prisoner of war over there in that famous prison that they had over there in Saigon.
I'm sure you've got stories. But I tell you, an interesting setup for the conversation with you. Not planned at all. In the last 1 year, I guess last December, I was at the Dulles Air and Space Museum, which is great.
The Smithsonian that's out there.
Just in September, I was down at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina to the Wright Brothers Memorial. So I figured those are two appropriate things to bring up with having you on the show. I got to tell you, obviously the Dulles Museum is fantastic. It's amazing. I really had gone from my memory how freaking amazing the Wright Brothers were. Wow. You just go down there, you take all that in, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how are these men doing this? Amazing.
Yeah, pretty amazing that they were able to pull all that off and do what they did. Pretty brave, actually.
When you go there to the dunes they were flying off and you look at it, like they're madmen in a way.
Yeah, I've never been down there. I've heard the story, of course, but I've never been down to see it. That sounds an interesting place to visit. As would be where you are now in Saigon. I would love to get there someday.
Yeah, you should. I mean, it's easy breezy. Just hop on the plane and go. I'll tell you where to stay. You'll be safe and secure. Listen, here's where I want to jump in. I love this. I was having a conversation with someone today, and they were lamenting that if they were to start this hard project that they imagined, they could see that the success was far away. They knew it was going to take a lot of effort. They were already in their mind thinking about the failure. And I got to share with you, I don't think like that. I try a lot of stuff. Some things work, some things don't. I never quit. And I don't think about the failure part. I don't know how to advise people that are stuck in the failure part before they ever start. I think you do a very good job of it. When you first meet people that are stuck in that malaise, how do you bring them into your world of, hey, that's not the best way to look at it?
I guess it depends. I think being afraid of failure or thinking about it, the only way it's a real problem is if it stops them from doing what they want to do, especially if they haven't yet failed. Not that it's silly, but people feel the way they feel. I think that just do it anyway. There's always the chance that it might work out. I guess the way I look at it, people may be worried. I think if you're nervous or worried about things, that probably means that it's important to you. I think that's a good thing. But no matter what it is, it can't prevent you from trying. I think that there's a bit of a difference between being nervous about something or maybe even worried about it. I think those are good signs maybe because it'll help you prepare. If they're afraid of a project failing, the best thing to do is to try to do stuff to make sure that doesn't happen. It's bad if it stops them from actually trying. We're human beings. We're going to worry. We're going to feel bad. We're going to be disappointed. Things are going to happen. You just need to power through all that stuff and minimize it. One thing that I tell people is give yourself a few seconds, 30 seconds of regret when something goes wrong. If you make a mistake and then move on from it, flush it and move on. I think it's okay to feel remorseful. I think it's okay to feel nervous. I think it's okay to feel worried, as long as those things motivate you and don't debilitate you. Once it becomes debilitating and you stop or you won't even try, then I think there's a problem. As long as I try, there's a chance. Maybe the odds are against me. Maybe it's 1 out of 1,000. Maybe it's 1 out of 1,000,000. It's one of the chapters in my book is 1 out of 1,000,000 is not zero. That does not mean it's not a chance. As long as you try, you're giving yourself an opportunity for success. Actually, I think trying is what I define as success. As long as you're in there fighting and trying, then I don't think you have regrets. You may not be successful in the end, but you give it your shot and you keep trying and don't give up, as you said. That's actually my definition of success, just giving it a go.
We control the trying.
That's correct. We don't always control the outcome, though. You may want that job or whatever. It might not happen. You can't force people to pick you to do stuff, but we can control the effort. We can control the trying. I think that's what you need to concentrate on. Not worry about it. You got to worry about things that might go wrong. Try to prevent that from happening. Things are going to happen. Stuff that you're worried about might not happen. It's the stuff that you don't worry about that might happen to you along the way that might surprise you.
I think back to there was a chart that I included in my first book. It was a process versus outcome chart. You can have a great process and still lose. You can have a crappy process and win. Ultimately, you need a good process and you can't control the outcome.
Right. It might not be that you made a bad decision. Things just happen and it doesn't always work out. But as long as you keep trying, I think that's what you can control. That's what you should concentrate on. That's, I guess, what I try to tell people is, to me, that's success. If they were to give up or not even try, I think that's disappointing. And that's where you lead to regret and wondering, and it's not a good situation.
I want you to take me back. I don't care when the moment is, how old you were. You had to have been young. I'm guessing that much. The moment that you realized about life, that long odds for the big things, the big achievements, long odds are normal. So bad odds can be normal. So when did you start to understand, okay, these odds look rough on paper, but I'm going to power through? What did you learn as a young boy that taught you you're going to go that way in your life and you're not going to be scared off by the long odds?
As a young boy, I learned a lot of these lessons in school because I didn't always do that great in school.
Join the club.
I wasn't the best student in school. I was a good student, but I wasn't the best. But I was this scrawny kid who was afraid of heights. I still don't like heights. I couldn't see very well, but yet I still was able to become an astronaut. I had this idea, I think, of astronauts as a little boy. I gave up on the dream because I thought it was just impossible. How am I ever going to do something like that? I don't fit the mold. I'm not the typical astronaut, whatever that means. I had no idea, so I forgot about it. But the lessons I learned, I think, as a young kid in school, having trouble. I remember I got a D in earth science in 8th grade, the second marking period. That was a wake-up call. 13 years old, I was like, ooh, that's not a good grade. And I remember I reached out and got some help. These smart kids in my high school would tutor the younger kids, and there was a free service because we couldn't afford a tutor. But this young man came and helped me, and I was able to do better and study harder. That worked. And then as I got older, there was the same thing that I realized that you're going to not do as well as you'd like on an exam, and you're going to be disappointed. But as long as you give it your best go, things might happen. Applying to college, all these things, I found out that things can happen as long as you try. They may not be exactly what you're hoping for, but you just keep going in that direction. I think the real epiphany, though, came, Michael, when I was in grad school at MIT, almost finished. I'd already been rejected from NASA twice at this point, almost finished with my PhD. I write about this in the first chapter of the book. Then I was 92, so I was 29 when I started thinking about applying all these things that I had learned to the astronaut program. And MIT wasn't a cakewalk neither. I'm talking eighth grade earth science, and then getting my PhD at MIT, I failed my qualifying exam the first time I took it. I failed miserably. So this exam you have to take, it's a comprehensive exam. There's written parts and oral parts. And I got toasted on the oral part. I failed miserably. And the oral part is the professors are asking these questions. I went in to see my advisor to get the bad news, and I knew I'd failed. There was no way they were going to pass me. I remember walking in there, and I said, I didn't pass, did I, Tom? His name was Tom Sheridan. He's still alive. And he said, no, Mike, you didn't. And I go, well, what do we do now? And he said, typically you'll get a second chance. But in your case, the committee and I were wondering if it's really worth your time to stick around for 6 months and try again. And I go, let me think about it. And I went back to him the next day and I said, I figure I got nothing really to lose. Only 6 months. If I get fail again, I'm still in the same spot. So let me give it a try. And he gave me this little smile and said, Mike, if one can learn to live with indignities, one can go far in life. I think what he was saying is if you can learn to get your butt kicked and get back up again and give it another try, you can go far. I changed the way I studied. I ended up getting some help from my friends to prepare for the oral exam more appropriately, and I was able to pass that second time. The epiphany I'm about to tell you about a minute ago happened after all these things. I think it was school that mainly taught me these things, getting knocked down in school, but continuing to go and then go forward. When I was getting to the end of the PhD, I was watching the television and there was some astronauts floating around. It was during the Academy Awards. They were doing a downlink with the space shuttle. I remember looking at them and saying, that's exactly what I want to do. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And then the second thought that went through my mind was, that's impossible. I've already been rejected twice. Who gets to do that? That's 1 in a million shot. I put my fancy MIT education to work and thought 1 out of a million is not zero. It's a very small number. And as long as you try, there's a chance. And I think sometimes that line of zeros and the 1 at the end, that it exists. It's a non-zero outcome. But as soon as you give up, that 1 bursts into a 0 and you're done. You know what the outcome is going to be. With certainty, you will not succeed. No one's going to come knocking at your door to ask if you want to become an astronaut. That's what I stuck to. Okay. Yeah, I know what I'm trying to do. As you said, things that are worthwhile usually are difficult. You just don't sign up for them. There's going to be ups and downs, successes and failures. You can't let those failures stop you. You just got to keep trying.
How did you, and I'm pretty sure my timing is right here, or my dates are right. I was a high school senior. I believe our class was watching TV live in 1986. I believe we watched the Challenger get destroyed, blow up. Your desire came after that. Obviously, you talked about seeking to be an astronaut as a young boy, but you got serious even after the Challenger explosion.
That was January of 1986. At that point, I had graduated college, had 2 years working at IBM in Manhattan. I was in New York City working, but I was headed to MIT to pursue the dream at that point. I was going to be leaving my job at IBM and going to grad school to pursue this astronaut career dream that next summer. And when that happened, I think what's important about this, Michael, is that we can think about things and imagine or whatever about the way we would react or the way we think about whatever it is, what we want to think is important. But sometimes we have to listen to ourselves. My dream was rekindled when I went to the movies as a senior in college and I saw this movie, The Right Stuff, and then read the book by Tom Wolfe about the original astronauts. I just always wanted to learn more about the space program. When that accident happened, my reaction was that it actually reinforced what I wanted to do, because I think that it's important to feel that deeply about whatever it is you're doing in life. And I felt like when that accident happened, that not that you want a death wish here, you don't want anything bad to happen, but I took it like that you should feel that passion. You should feel whatever you're doing in life is that important that you're willing to make a sacrifice. You're willing to take a risk, that a dream is worth the risk. When it happened, I felt out of the loop because I was working in an office building in Manhattan. It was a very nice job and environment and all that, but I wasn't able to help with what had happened with the space shuttle accident. I don't want to feel like this again. I don't want to feel like something like that happens and I'm totally helpless, not able to help, not able to contribute, whatever that means. I wanted to be a part of the solution. It made me feel separated from where I really wanted to be because I wanted to be there to help. And it also made me realize that you should be willing to take a risk. And that for me, for whatever reason, the space program was the most important thing that was in my heart and soul and mind. I felt like it was worth the risk. What they were trying to do was worth the risk they were taking.
All these years later, what is it about you that is so motivating? This is the first interaction I've had with you, and I've not watched you on videos before or anything, but there's something about you that's just motivating. And I know you're channeling this. I know you like the feeling of giving back. I feel like when I get off this call, I've got to wake up tomorrow and put something, a sticky on the wall or something. It's like the Mike sticky.
I'll take it as a compliment.
It is. There's something about it that you know when you can channel it. A crazy person like me that tells you my story where I'm running around the world, I'm going to instantly relate, okay? Not everybody's going to relate, for sure, but we need more. In this day and age where people are wasting so much time on so much nonsense, we need more of, like you said, the right stuff.
I agree. I think what motivated me was I had this passion that developed as a little boy watching Neil Armstrong on the moon. I never thought it could actually happen. And then it got, as I mentioned, got relit as a senior in college. For me, as far as the motivation here to talk about this stuff is that there were lessons that I learned as an astronaut. The perseverance part was to get into the astronaut office. That was it. I got selected, but felt like I showed up at work. I hadn't done anything yet. I'd just been hired. You went through all these trials to get where you wanted to go, to get that opportunity. And what happened, and that's chapter 1 in the book. Chapter 2 to 10, the rest of the book is what I learned at NASA. It was interesting because we would have visits by these legends of the space program, like Jim Lovell and Gene Kranz from Apollo 13, and Alan Bean, one of the moonwalkers, and John Young was a moonwalker, Neil Armstrong. All these guys came and told us stories. And I think what it was is the basic theme was, don't blow this opportunity you've been given. Bob Cabana, the chief of our office, when we first arrived, our first day at work, he told us, we're very happy to have all of you. All of us has gone through a similar experience of trying to get to that. I was rejected 4 times, including a medical disqualification that I had to overcome. And I was able to do that. I got on my 4th try, but my 3rd try, I was interviewed and then rejected medically. And I had to figure out a way to get around that. And I did through some vision training, which is the first time I think anyone ever did that at NASA, but it worked. And I was able to get in on my 4th try. And so this is great. It was really a lot of hard work. But I remember Bob said, we're very happy to have all of you. It's first day of work. Very happy to have all of you here. Bob was a Marine colonel, a test pilot astronaut. And he said, but I want you to remember that for every one of you here, there are thousands of others that wish they could trade places with you this morning. And the only difference between you and them is that you're more fortunate than they are. And so you owe it to them and to everybody else to make the most of this opportunity. And I remember that set the tone for me. I haven't learned everything yet about being successful in this job. I did have the perseverance part of it, which is really important, but all these other things, learning about teamwork, leadership, and how to operate in that environment, speaking up and dealing with change and dealing with disappointments, all these lessons that I learned, that I soaked up as an astronaut over the years, they're also applicable to everything else that we do in life. They're applicable if you're in a cubicle or if you're at home with your family or whatever it is that you are. These lessons apply. And I only discovered that since leaving the astronaut office. I thought that maybe the most valuable things I could share was what it's like to launch into space and to spacewalk and view the planet. And that's all cool. But really, I think what I've found has been most useful to people is some of the things we're talking about, like perseverance, leadership, speaking up, dealing with mistakes, dealing with change, and so on. That applies to everybody. Maybe that sums it up. I felt so lucky to have all these experiences, and now I'm very motivated, as you say, to try to share them because I think they're helpful.
I believe on my podcast over the years, I've had 8 Nobel Prize winners on this podcast. I believe you're my first astronaut. My mind could have gone wacky and hundreds of guests. Perhaps something's gone wrong, but I don't think so. But I want to go actually just really quickly, this tactile sensation. I would love for you, and you can just take a moment, the feeling you just said, people might not care about this stuff as much. The takeoff part. What is the most memorable moment in a takeoff to go to space? What is that most memorable moment? The physical feeling is what I'm really getting after.
The most memorable moment for the launch for me was before my first launch, looking up at the spaceship at night, all lit up with smoke coming off of it and making noises. It looked like a beast. And I thought to myself, this wasn't such a good idea. It was pretty intimidating. I don't know if that's my favorite. That's the one that stands out. That's where I think trust comes in. You have to trust the equipment, trust your training, trust your team, and trust yourself when you get scared. That's what always helped me. And I got inside and it wasn't that bad. So I was very happy once I got inside. I felt comfortable. Thinking about things is always worse than doing them when it's a big event. But as far as physically jolting, it is the liftoff, especially the shuttle. So the shuttle had main engines, 3 main engines that were liquid fueled that would start up first. They ran for 6 seconds, just like a lawnmower or a car that's liquid fueled with gasoline. you can cut the fuel flow and shut down the engine. And so the shuttle worked the same way. You can cut the fuel flow and stop. And they did that twice in the shuttle program. They didn't like what they were saying. Those first 6 seconds, they cut the fuel flow and come back another day. You got 6 seconds to make up your mind if you want to go anywhere. Because after those 6 seconds, the solid rockets, like those 2 big rockets we had on either side of the space shuttle, and they're made of solid material, solid propellant. So they're like giant sticks of dynamite. So once you light them, you can't turn them off. You cannot. And they are stuck to you for 2.5 minutes. Any abort or anything you could do, it happens after those things leave the vehicle. They burned out after 2.5 minutes, but you're at the mercy of those things. They gave a lot of thrust to the vehicle right away. So before we cleared the tower, as soon as you lift it off, you're already going 100 miles an hour. And we accelerated from 0 to 17,500 miles an hour for 8.5 minutes. But I think it was that first initial jolt. I remember when I was a kid, I used to see these Apollo missions, these giant rocket just almost like lumbering to get off the launch pad. The shuttle moved very quickly. And so there's no doubt like, oh, I wonder if we're going anywhere. No, you're going somewhere. The sensation hit me about a minute in or so. I felt like I was leaving home. I had the sensation of leaving. I was really going somewhere, leaving home for the very first time. That's what it felt like. I'm going somewhere here.
I saw a comment from William Shatner. He went up on one of the flights and he made the comment. I'm curious your perspective about it. His comment, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, was once he got up and he looked back, he realized, wow, things are a little fragile here. We might be the only life, and this is fragile.
Yeah, you can see the atmosphere when you get up there. And he was only up there, I think, for 4 minutes or something. He had a very short flight, but you get the idea. When you look out the window, you see the thin line of the atmosphere. If you think of an onion, the Earth is an onion. That top thin layer of the onion is our atmosphere. The size relationship of the rest of the Earth to the atmosphere. You realize how fragile it is. And you look in the other direction to the darkness out there and you realize we've checked out the neighborhood. We've got only one place to go right now, and that's Earth. It strikes you. The beauty of our planet, it's like looking into paradise. I feel like I was looking into heaven. As far as us being the only ones here, as far as we know, we are right now. But I think if you see what the missions I worked on with Hubble Space Telescope, Hubble has shown us that there are billions of galaxies with billions of stars in each galaxy, most of which have multiple planets orbiting around them. So I think there's life other places. And we're starting to find signs of the building blocks of life in our own solar system. That doesn't mean ET is anywhere nearby, but we're starting to see, if we can see these possibilities, the moons of Jupiter, for example, we thought they were just frozen blocks of ice. And what we've discovered is they're a lot warmer than we thought they were. So they're frozen on the outside. There's a very good chance there are oceans underneath them. And not that there's anything swimming around under there, but we believe that life began, and some people believe that life began in the ocean. There's a lot of scientists, that's what they think, began in the oceans here on Earth, and maybe something like that could happen out there. Who knows? We don't know what's out there. I don't think we've been visited yet. We haven't made that contact yet. There may be something else out there.
The public-facing diplomatic comments. Now, can you tell us the insider view about the bodies that we have out there at Roswell already?
Yeah, let's see them. How about that? How about we do a museum exhibit with those guys? We need some proof here. Unless we have something, whatever. Did they come with any change? They got any currency from the planet Og? We need to see this stuff. There's no way that they could cover that up.
Let me shift you into the big word, which is an important word to you. It's the title of your book. It's a great word. It's not used enough. Most people are not astronauts, so they're not going to think to use it. But obviously it has meanings across all types of disciplines any of us could be pursuing in our life. I'm not going to talk about it right now, but I'm currently been pursuing my own version of a moonshot for the last 5 years. It's a film project. I'm not deterred at all. It's one of these things where I've made a film before. I've written 8 books. I know the process, so it doesn't scare me. Yeah, I've got to raise a lot of money and all that kind of stuff. But so what? If I quit, then I'm not going to do it at all. If I stop now, it definitely won't happen. My question to you really is this concept of a moonshot. I'll let you give your best explanation, but I think it's something that we perhaps don't see in culture as much. I hear so many people these days, look, I get it. Everyone's got to put food on the plate and everything. People talk about, well, the jobs. A moonshot's not a job. A moonshot is a risk. A moonshot is a risk to make something big that might change your world entirely or our world entirely. So you can tell with my passion, I love the phrase. I love the 2 words. It's great. But let me let you speak to it.
I think it's whatever you want to define as what your dream might be. And as you said, the book's title is Moonshot. The Apollo program was a moonshot because they were going to the moon. Come to mean a big dream. There's another book, for example, named Moonshot that was written by Alex Borla, who's the CEO of Pfizer for developing the vaccine for COVID. That was this huge moonshot. Can we do this? Can we achieve this great goal? And they were able to pull it off. In the context of my book and the way I think of it, it's that dream that might seem impossible to you. And it can be anything. You can have a couple of them throughout your life too, I think. But it could be whether it's getting a college degree or going to law school or business school or getting through that successfully or starting your own business or even something with your family, something you want to accomplish with your family or your kids or whatever that might be. Whatever it is in your heart, in your mind, your soul of what you want to do, that big dream, boy, if I could do anything, if I could do one thing in life, that's what I would want to do. If I'd want to accomplish one thing in my personal life, that's what I'd want to accomplish. Whatever that is, I think we all have our own personal moonshots. And some of them might be like developing a cure to cancer, but other things might be, let's get along this weekend with the kids. It could be almost anything. That's what the book is hopefully going to help people achieve, because I think through hard work and perseverance and some of these things that I learned, almost anything is possible. And I was able to achieve my moonshot, and I still have a lot more to go that I'm thinking about. It sounds like you do as well, Michael. That's what makes life interesting.
Ultimately, it's that feeling. I think that's what I was trying to say to you a few minutes ago, which is you give off the vibe of, I got a moonshot. I want you to get a moonshot, Mike to get a moonshot, the audience to get a moonshot. I want everyone to get a moonshot. And that is extremely valuable to people that might not have the confidence yet. They might be questioning. And sometimes one voice can change everything.
I hope so. There's been people that have influenced me, that have changed me, and experiences that have helped me. As you get older, you start thinking, what can I do to help others with these experiences I've had? And there was a moment where I was orbiting the planet, Michael. You go around the planet at the speed I mentioned every 90 minutes. So you do one lap, one orbit in 90 minutes, about half that time in sunlight, half that time in darkness. When you can feel the sunlight, you can feel the temperature before you see the sun, like on a spacewalk. You know when you're going into sunlight because you can feel the warmth. There was this one particular time where I was in the perfect position to see all this, and I had a moment to look as I was waiting for the sun. We came around, going around the planet. I could see the sun in a black sky, which is cool. And I looked back at the planet, and I saw this line that divides darkness and sunlight, which we call it the Terminator. It's the day-night line. So on the right side, you can see, okay, Arizona is lit up really brightly and still dark out in California. We used to live in San Diego, and just wait a few moments, and all of a sudden it's sunlight and it's morning in California. You're looking at this, and that line, it's moving. And what it is, you realize the sun's there and the moon might be there and stars are out there, but the planet is right down there. And that line that's moving is actually the rotation of our planet. The feeling I had when I looked at it, that the movement of our planet, the rotation of it, this huge planet that we live on, the word that came to my mind was permanence. There was no stuttering. There was no hiccup. There was no hesitation in that motion. And I had the sense this has been going on for billions of years and is going to continue to go on for billions of years. Long after I'm gone, long after we're all gone. I think a lot of what we all try to do is try to leave this planet. I left to go to space, but came back. But leave whatever the future generations are, whoever's the younger folks who are coming up, is to try to help to share those stories, as people did with me. Those astronauts came by and gave me such great advice, my heroes, when I was a little boy.
Let me push on that a little bit. It was actually exactly where I was going to go. All these legends you get a chance to meet. You name the name, you name the insight. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but was there one voice? Was there one man? Was there one insight that just has always stayed closest to consciousness for you? That one bit of great insight that just changed you? Because you've had a chance to meet, as you say, all these legends and learn with them and work with them. Was there one that rose to the top for you?
Yeah, there was. Let me give you a couple. Pre-astronaut, I would say what really influenced me was my dad. He worked for the New York City Fire Department. He gave me the sense of service, of how important that was, and how you can get joy from camaraderie and working together with others who are trying to do the same thing, like in the fire department and helping people. And then a guy named Jim McDonald, who was a guy I met during a summer job, who talked to me about, he called it follow your bliss and pursuing your dreams. They had both of those, I think the work ethic and the sense of service from my dad, and then the need to dream and follow what makes you happy from Jim McDonald. Once I got to be an astronaut, though, there is one person that stands out, and that is Alan Bean, who was a fourth person to walk on the moon. I write about him a lot in the book. He came in and spoke to our astronaut class. And all those other guys came and they were great. But Alan came in and it was life-changing because he shared all these lessons that he had learned, hard lessons that he had learned. And the reason he told us is that he didn't want us to make the same mistakes. And he wanted to share all these things in leadership and teamwork that he had accumulated over the years. It was amazing.
Was it just his words, or was there something about his physical nature, his persona, his tone of voice, or was it just the content he was giving?
That's an interesting question.
I'm good at this, man. I'm good at this.
Yeah, I think it was the way he presented it. He was very soft-spoken, as was Neil Armstrong. Neil Armstrong was painfully shy and very modest and was always turning the attention to everybody else and giving credit to others. And Alan was the same way. I think what Alan, the way his persona was, is that he was just a kind man. And he was really interesting in that he was both an engineer, fighter pilot, test pilot, and astronaut, but also he was an artist. Michael, if you can see behind me, this is a lithograph of one of his paintings. That's Alan. That is a reproduction, but he painted his experiences on the moon. He was just a very kind and non-assuming person who wanted to help and wanted to express what he had experienced to help others. And he did that through his art because he painted his experiences on the moon. So he was able to communicate what he had done through art. He never run into people like the right left brain thing going on. I've never seen anything like it, where he could paint like he could and create things like you're seeing behind me, but also be able to do the technical job of an astronaut. He is the person that stands out in my life after I got to NASA, who is just a wonderful mentor and friend.
There's a line that I circled from your work, which I really love. It's a very big picture concept. And for many people, if they've not taken advantage of trying their moonshots, this might not resonate. For me, it's just brilliant. It's very simple. Even if I never succeed at my goal, will my efforts in trying to reach that goal get me to a better place than where I am now, regardless of the outcome? Man, that's simple right there. That in of itself is a book, right?
I'll keep writing. That realization came to me. I got rejected outright twice and then got out of grad school and then got medically disqualified the third time after I was working at the Johnson Space Center and got that overturned to be able to compete another time. And I got my fourth application. I got another interview and I passed the eye exam. I was teaching at Georgia Tech. Because at that point now, I got a faculty position at Georgia Tech and I was starting to do some human factors, human machine robotics work, research there. Was teaching there, still working with NASA, but now I was living in Atlanta. And I remember during spring break, I went with my family to a beach vacation, more or less on island off of the coast of Georgia. We drove over there. And I remember thinking that one afternoon playing with the kids in the sand that life is pretty good. And if I got rejected again, I was waiting to hear probably about another month I was going to get the answer. And I had no idea what was going to happen, but the odds are it's probably going to be another no, right? That was most likely. I was very hopeful. And I thought, if I get told no, I'm just going to keep trying. I'll try again next time they have a selection. But if I do get told no, I'm not in a bad place right now. I was living in Atlanta, teaching at Georgia Tech. The family was young at the time, kids were little, and life was pretty good. And I felt like I was led to something that was pretty good. If I could never become an astronaut, I was still contributing to the space program. I was teaching at Georgia Tech. I had gotten my PhD. I'd gotten a pilot's license, so I knew how to fly an airplane, was doing that every once in a while. I'd gotten a scuba qualification along the way. I was taking care of my health because I knew that was a big part of being an astronaut. All these things, I'd met so many great people and so many astronauts and people in the space program. And that's where I had landed at that point, getting ready to hear. And that wasn't bad. So I think all the things that motivated me to give me that extra push to hang in there, to try to become an astronaut, had led me somewhere else. If that's where it remained and I never got to the astronaut office, I think that would have been okay. And interestingly enough, that's what I ended up doing after leaving NASA, is that I'm back in academics teaching at Columbia.
You're speaking to this personal satisfaction that you've found in so many different ways that you've gone. But I think the key thing that you're saying there is the flexibility, because so many people, they'll dream of some dream, but they might not start, they might not try, and they get bottled up there. Whereas if you try, maybe you don't get to the dream you wanted to when you started, but some other door opens. And then all of a sudden you find some mastery in that or some achievement in that. And now you've got some skill set or some understanding that you never expected to have. It's nowhere close to your original dream, but you still have that personal satisfaction. That personal satisfaction, sometimes people overthink it. And if you just get into the game, you can't predict the outcome, but if you get into the game, you just start going, you're going to find good things, to use your word, if you just try.
You never know where it's going to lead you. And you may plan out what you think is going to happen and get ready to be surprised. A friend of mine described, my friend Drew Feustel, said it seems like a bunch of holes in the Swiss cheese, this way, then that way, and then this way and that way. And it doesn't seem to be any rhythm to it or any sense to it. But then you look behind you at those holes and they're all lined up perfectly to lead you where you are. I think it's important to take those steps on that journey because you might surprise yourself. You might get hit with some realizations about yourself and some positive things. There's going to be some negative things. There always are. You're going to get knocked down and these doors are going to be closed. But other times you can figure out a way to open them up or something else. As I went along, as long as I didn't give up, good things eventually happened. I found as time went on that I really loved the space program as much as I thought I would. I really felt very comfortable around other astronauts that I had met before I was an astronaut. I really felt like I could fit in and contribute and be a part of that team. And I never thought that would have been possible. And I wouldn't have known that unless I tried, because my thinking of what being an astronaut was the superhuman superhero Neil Armstrong. But Neil Armstrong is one of the nicest men I've ever met in my life. Very kind and humble and giving the credit to others and willing to talk and help. He wasn't a big personality, almost embarrassed by all the attention he got, but he was an extremely good person. And he's also the first guy to walk on the moon. When we think of the first guy to walk on the moon, you think of Superman. But when you meet the person, you realize he's just a guy that you admire and want to be friends with, really, is what I discovered. And so I would have never known that unless I took those steps. And I think that's some of the things I want to share with people is that if there's something they're interested in, you owe it to yourself to give it a try. You really do, because I think a lot of times people won't do things for other people, and that's important. But you're also achieving your moonshot for others as well, for your family, for your friends. If you can pull something off like this, that's a great thing. Everyone's going to be happy for you and take satisfaction in that. But you owe it to yourself to give it a try, because if it happened to me where it worked, it can work for anybody, really. You just got to give it a shot and see what happens.
I got a question. Focus and distraction. Look, you and I did half my life. I've got the internet. Half my life, I did not have the internet. I had all kinds of other distractions coming along in the 70s and 80s, but not the internet and not a phone in my pocket. Speak to perhaps younger generations, any wisdom you can share on your ability to focus, how you learned to focus, what lesson you might be able to pass along, and perhaps to speak to distraction, because it does feel like that the distractions that young people face today, again, we didn't have the phone in our pocket growing up, so they win when it comes to distraction. How do you see this notion of focus and distraction?
I think there's a time to focus and there's a time where you don't have to, maybe. And when you need to focus, you really need to concentrate on what it is you're doing.
Why were you so good at that?
I don't know if I was or not, but I think what I learned was, I don't know if it's always a good thing. Sometimes I have trouble multitasking, but in getting the job done, I'm able to really concentrate on what I think is important at the time. And what I found is that what I've tried to aspire to is that there are times where you really need to pay attention to things. I think it's hard to keep that laser focus for a long time. Can't do it all the time, I don't think. But there are certain things that are coming up that there's an opportunity. For example, in school, we learn this. For example, during a semester, there's times where you have midterms and then you have finals. You need to be concentrating at that time. That's when you really need to focus on what is going on. If not, then you might not give yourself a good chance to be successful, as good a chance as you could. I think that I was able to do that, where I could just work hard and concentrate and try to keep the distractions to a minimum. And I think that was very helpful for me. I think it is hard to do that all the time, but I think you have to know when that time is. I had almost this internal feeling when I would come up 9 months before a space flight. I remember that things would start in my mind. It was almost a big event coming up. You realize it's there. It's real. It's going to happen. And now it's time to really focus on it and not worry about these other things. It happened for me in my space flights around 9 months is when I got that feeling. And then at 6 months, it was totally immersed. I'm in the gym every day. I'm going to be reading whatever I need to read at night to prepare for the next day's simulation. I'm going to spend time with my family when I can, because that's really important, because I'm going to be going on this journey that we're not sure what the outcome is going to be, a bit risky. So trying to make sure that all the personal relationships are in good order, that's what I focused on. There's a time where you need that focus and other times where you might not need it as much because it's hard to keep it up all the time. But there's certainly you have to recognize when those times are and pay attention to what you need to pay attention to.
Given your resume, given your career, your CV, you don't give off the nerd vibe at all.
Okay, thank you. I think.
I bring up the focus issue. I had a guy on this podcast years ago. His name is Vernon Smith, won the Nobel Prize, shared it with Daniel Kahneman. When I was interviewing him, he was a professor at George Mason University at the time. We were setting up in his office. He was famous for having Asperger's syndrome. I said to him, Dr. Smith, are we going to bother you setting up in your office? And he looked at me straight in the eye. He goes, I will not know you are here.
Yeah.
And that was focus, man. That was focus.
I think with my job, too, as an astronaut, there were times where you realize if you didn't focus, then bad things can happen. That happened to me on occasion, in-flight emergency in an airplane once, actually a couple times, but one time in particular, we had a hydraulics failure in the airplane. That was life-threatening because you can't fly the airplane. You have to eject out of the airplane if you lose your hydraulic. We had one system was leaking. The other one was leaking through that bad system. So we had about 20 to 30 minutes to get the airplane on a runway or else we would have had trouble. Those are times where you realize this is what I need to concentrate on. In the astronaut job, there were so many things like that I had to learn. I think you can be trained to do almost anything. When we went through leadership training, we went through followership training, being a good follower, being supportive of the leader, but also leading people. I was not a thrill seeker growing up, so I had to learn how to deal with dangerous situations and trust my equipment and my gear and check it. Those were things that I was trained to do as an astronaut. I was a civilian. I'm coming into a high-risk environment that can be very safe if you handle it the right way. And so there are these lessons that I was taught, what we've been talking about, that I think can also apply to my personal life. And I think that, yeah, we had to focus when we had an in-flight emergency, but you also need to focus if you want to be successful. You need to be able to shut out those distractions. I think it's something that everyone needs to be able to do. Some things come naturally to us and some things don't. But I think there are certain things about being successful that if they're not natural to you, you've got to figure out a way to do them well enough so that you can give yourself a chance to succeed.
I hope you enjoy this today. My objective on my podcast is to have a conversation because ultimately it's not trying to take somebody word by word through a book. It's to see from their personality what the words are going to say. So, of course, people should take the deep dive. They should check out the book. The book is Moonshot, a NASA astronaut's guide to achieving the impossible. But I think just by your stories and your personality, people already start to get a feel for that. So they can take the deeper dive with the book. But I appreciate you coming on. You're jacking my adrenaline up here late at night. Now I won't be able to sleep or something here.
You'll be fine.
In about 2 hours, I'll be fine.
Appreciate you having me, Michael. This has been a fun conversation. I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Mike, is there a place beyond the bookstores, Amazon, all that kind of fun stuff? Is there a website that you would like to direct people to?
Yeah, I do have my own website. It's MikeMassimino.com. There's a way you can contact me there, see about some of the things that I've done in the past. I was the first guy to tweet from space, Astro_Mike. So there you go. Take that in your lunch. So last night I was at a gala at the American Museum of Natural History. Seth Meyers was the host of this gala that we had here in New York City. I had never met him, but he made fun of me on Saturday Night Live. He made fun of my tweet on Saturday Night Live. It was boring, he thought. At least the writers, but I went up to him, met him last night and spoke to him about it. He didn't remember what the bit he did making fun of me, but we took pictures together. He said he always takes pictures with people he's made fun of if they're happy about it. And I was happy about it. Anyway, I was the first guy to tweet from space, and then I got made fun of on Saturday Night Live, but it gave me street cred with the kids because they thought that was cool that I got made fun of on Saturday Night Live.
First person to tweet from space. No one else can ever say that. There you go.
There you go. Take that, Neil Armstrong. So anyway, I'm there and on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. That's where people can contact or find out what's going on with me, and then the website and MikeMassimino.com. The book is available just about everywhere at your local bookseller. If you're inclined to do that, that's always good, but also at the bigger sellers online as well.
Mike, keep me posted if there's future books coming down the pike. I'd love to have another conversation.
Yeah, we'll see. Right now, I'm looking forward to the launch for this one, but I hope there's more in the future. We'll see how this one goes.
Mike, take care. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up,
down and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.